Median salary in the United States is up 18% since 2020. If you look strictly at the headline numbers, the American worker has never been more prosperous. On paper, your paycheck has swelled by nearly a fifth in just a few years. Fast food workers are finally seeing $20 an hour in several states, and starting corporate salaries have breached historical ceilings. But if that is true, why does it feel like everyone is drowning? Credit card debt has just surpassed $1.1 trillion. Auto loan delinquencies are hitting levels we haven't seen since the 2008 crash. Most telling of all, the personal savings rate, which used to sit comfortably around 8%, has plummeted into the low single digits. How can we be earning more money than at any point in human history while mathematically becoming more financially precarious? The answer is a deep, systemic disconnect between nominal wealth and real wealth. It turns out we are playing a game where the rules were changed while we were still on the field. To understand why your raise feels like a pay cut, we have to perform a rigorous financial literacy audit. We need to strip away the illusion of the dollar and look at the cultural machinery working against the middle class. Today, I want to walk you through the manipulation of inflation data, the psychological traps of lifestyle inflation, and the three structural forces that have essentially broken the American wealth escalator. This isn't just a macro lesson, it's a survival guide for your bank account. If you find this kind of deep dive into the real math of money useful, it might be the best return on investment for your time to hit that subscribe button. I spend my weekends reading through Federal Reserve reports so you don't have to, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. Let's look at the Grand Illusion of the Consumer Price Index. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is the holy grail of economic indicators. It tells the Federal Reserve when to move interest rates and determines Social Security adjustments. But here is the problem. Since the mid-90s, the way we calculate CPI has changed in a way that, from a personal finance perspective, often masks the true cost of living. One of the primary tools for this is something called substitution bias. Historically, the CPI measured a fixed basket of goods. If the price of steak went up, the index went up. Simple. But today, the calculation assumes that if steak gets too expensive, you'll just be a rational consumer and buy ground beef instead. Because you substituted a cheaper item, the official inflation number stays lower. Now, from a macroeconomic standpoint, the math works. But from a human standpoint, it's a mathematical endorsement of a declining standard of living. If your salary goes up by 5%, but you're forced to eat hamburger instead of steak just to stay within your grocery budget, you aren't wealthier. Your purchasing power has eroded, even though the government tells you inflation is perfectly under control. You're earning more, but you're living a lower quality life. Then we have what economists call hedonic quality adjustments. This is where things get really surreal. This happens when the Bureau of Labor Statistics decides a price increase isn't actually inflation because the product got better. Take the modern car. The average price of a new vehicle has skyrocketed past $45,000. But the government looks at that car and sees rear-view cameras, lane assist AI, and fancy touchscreens. They mathematically deduct the estimated value of those features from the price increase. So, on paper, car inflation looks moderate. But here is the reality for your wallet. You can't go to a dealership today and buy a basic 2005-era car for a 2005-era price. You are forced to pay for the screens and the sensors whether you want them or not. Your bank account is depleted by the full $45,000, not the hedonically adjusted amount. The government sees a more valuable asset. You just see a higher monthly payment that eats your raise for breakfast. It's a classic case of paying for progress you didn't necessarily ask for, but are required to fund. The biggest piece of the CPI puzzle is shelter, which makes up about a third of the index. You would think the government tracks actual home prices, right? Not exactly. They use a metric called owner's equivalent rent. They basically ask homeowners a hypothetical question. If you were to rent your house out today, how much do you think it would go for? It's a subjective guess, Between 2020 and 2023, while home prices were surging by 40% in many markets and mortgage rates were tripling, this rental metric lagged far behind. This decoupling of the actual cost to buy a home from the official inflation rate is why the data feels so wrong. If you're a millennial or Gen Z looking at your first home, you've watched the cost of entry double while the headline CPI told you inflation was only 7 or 8%. By the time the official numbers catch up, the damage to your wealth accumulation is already done. You're working with an 18% salary bump in a world where the roof over your head costs 60% more. The takeaway here is that you cannot rely on the headline CPI to manage your life. It is a macroeconomic aggregate designed to guide policy, not your household budget. If you want to survive this, you have to calculate your own personal inflation rate. Track your 4 horsemen: housing, transportation, food, and energy. If your personal costs have gone up by 12% and your boss gave you a 6% raise, you didn't get a promotion. You got a 6% pay cut disguised as a victory. But wait, it actually gets worse. Even if you manage to avoid the inflation trap, there is a cultural machine designed to siphon off every extra dollar before you can even save it. I call it the democratization of luxury, and it's why your higher salary is disappearing into a digital void. We'll get to the exact portfolio strategy to fix this in a few minutes, but first, we need to talk about why our brains are being rewired to spend faster than we earn. Lifestyle inflation used to be simple. You got a promotion, you bought a slightly nicer car, or went out to dinner an extra night a week. It was slow. But today, lifestyle inflation is on steroids because of the democratization of luxury. In your parents' day, they only compared themselves to their actual neighbors, the Joneses. If the Joneses had a similar job, they probably had a similar lifestyle, which created a natural ceiling on spending. Today, your neighbors are on Instagram and TikTok. You are subconsciously comparing your lifestyle to the top 1% of earners, influencers, and curated algorithmic illusions. This has moved luxury experiences from the want category into the need category. I see it all the time with what's called the Diderot effect. You buy one new thing, maybe a new phone, and suddenly your old case looks cheap. Then you need the wireless earbuds to match. Then you need the smartwatch. It's a spiral of consumption designed to make your new salary feel inadequate the moment it hits your account. The psychological pressure to participate in experiential living has become a frictionless assault on our long-term wealth. We aren't just keeping up with the Joneses anymore, we're trying to keep up with the Kardashians on a middle-class paycheck. One of the most effective ways the modern economy drains your higher salary is through the shift from ownership to subscriptions. Corporate America has realized that monthly recurring revenue is much more profitable than selling you something once. We are living in the era of life as a service. Think about it. You used to buy a movie, a CD, or software. Now you rent them forever. It's death by 1,000 cuts. A $15 subscription feels insignificant, but when the average household carries 10 or 15 of them, you're looking at hundreds of dollars a month. That money, if invested at an 8% return over 30 years, could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement. Instead, it's financing the stock price of tech conglomerates. To fight back, you need the right tools. I've actually spent months building the ultimate personal finance dashboard and the monthly budget planner specifically to help you find these leaks. These are the exact spreadsheets I use to audit my own life and keep my burn rate low. You can find them at the link in the description. They're designed to give you the mathematical clarity you need to see exactly where your raise is going before the subscription vampires get to it. Then we have the final boss of frictionless spending. Buy now, pay later. Historically, the greatest defense in personal finance was friction. Handling physical cash triggered pain receptors in the brain. Credit cards removed the cash friction, and Apple Pay removed the card friction. Now, services like Klarna and Afterpay have removed the final barrier, the balance in your bank account. By breaking a $200 purchase into 4 easy payments of $50, they exploit a human bias called present bias. We overvalue the reward of the shoes today and ignore the cost of the payments tomorrow. This normalization of micro-debt means that when you get that 18% raise, the money is often spoken for before you even earn it. It gets instantly absorbed by the undertow of deferred payments for things you've already consumed. This cultural shift has made it so that even with a higher salary, we are essentially living paycheck to paycheck, just with nicer stuff. The extra income doesn't go to your future, it goes to the ghost of your past spending. We've replaced the safety net with a treadmill, and we're wondering why we're exhausted. The solution to lifestyle creep isn't just willpower. It's about building friction back into your life. I recommend the 48-hour rule. If you see something you want, you have to wait 2 full days before hitting buy. Usually, the dopamine spike fades, and your rational brain realizes you don't actually need it. But even if you become the most disciplined saver on earth, there are 3 massive structural forces in the economy that are actively trying to devalue your work. If you think the 7% inflation was bad, wait until you see what happens to the money supply over the next decade. We need to talk about the fiat trap, and why earning more dollars might be the wrong goal entirely. If you're just saving cash, you're playing a losing game. Let's look at why the very unit of account we use is being debased, and how that creates the Cantillon effect, which is essentially a hidden tax on the working class. This is the part they don't teach you in school, but it's the most important piece of the puzzle. The first structural force making you poorer is monetary debasement. Between 2020 and 2021, the US government and the Federal Reserve expanded the money supply at a rate we've never seen before. Trillions of dollars were created out of thin air. When you increase the supply of currency without increasing the goods and services it can buy, the value of each dollar drops. That is the root of inflation. But here is the kicker. That new money doesn't enter the economy evenly. This is called the Cantillon effect. The people closest to the money printer, banks, big corporations, and wealthy asset owners, get the new money first. They get to spend it before prices rise. By the time that money trickles down to you in the form of an 18% wage increase, the price of assets like stocks and real estate has already surged by 30 or 40%. The working class gets the inflation, the asset class gets the wealth. This is why your higher salary feels so weak. You are being paid in a debased currency that has lost its potency. Earning $100,000 today is roughly the mathematical equivalent of earning $75,000 just a decade ago. You're running faster, but the track is moving backward. The second force is the financialization of housing. It used to be that a house was a utility, a place to live. Now it's a global asset class. Hedge funds and private equity firms realized that single-family homes were great yield-generating assets. They used cheap debt to outbid families, turning potential homeowners into perpetual renters. At the same time, we have the mortgage lock-in effect. Millions of people have 3% mortgages from a few years ago. Now that rates are 7%, they can't afford to move. This has paralyzed the market and kept prices artificially high. For the average worker, this is devastating. In the 80s, a median home cost about 3 times the median income. Today, it's closer to 7 or 10 times. Since housing is the primary engine of middle-class wealth, being priced out means you're renting your lifestyle rather than owning it. Your higher salary isn't building your equity, it's subsidizing your landlord's wealth generation. You're effectively paying a massive access fee just to exist in a zip code with a decent job. It's a structural barrier that a small raise simply can't climb over, and it's fundamentally changing the math of the American dream. The third force involves the hyperinflation of healthcare and education. These are the two escalators that are supposed to move you into the middle class. While the price of TVs and toys has dropped, the cost of a degree and a hospital stay has exploded, often at 3 times the rate of CPI. Higher education has become an arms race of administrative bloat funded by non-dischargeable student debt. You enter the workforce with that 18% higher salary, but you're often servicing tens of thousands in debt at 7% interest. Your discretionary income is decimated before you even see it. Then there's healthcare. Even with a good job, premiums and deductibles have shifted onto the employee. A $10,000 raise sounds great until your out-of-pocket maximum goes up by $5,000 and one ER visit wipes out your savings. These aren't just expenses, they are structural failures. The cost of admission to a stable life has risen faster than the wages that are supposed to pay for it. You're being squeezed by a system that demands more of your labour for the same basic level of security. It's a systemic drain that requires a radical change in strategy. There is one final silent killer of your higher salary: bracket creep. We have a progressive tax system, meaning as you earn more, you're pushed into higher tax brackets. While these brackets are adjusted for inflation, they use the official CPI, which we already established underreports the real cost of living. Imagine you earned $70,000 in 2019, and now you earn $85,000. That looks like a win, but that extra $15,000 is taxed at your highest marginal rate. After federal, state, and payroll taxes, you might only see $9,000 of that. Now, if the real cost of your groceries, insurance, and utilities has gone up by $12,000 over those years, you have a net deficit of $3,000. You earn more money, but you have less life. This is exactly why the savings rate is dropping. People aren't necessarily being frivolous. They are using credit cards to bridge the gap between their nominal raises and their real costs. They are being taxed on gains that aren't actually gains in purchasing power. You're being penalized for an increase in income that was actually just an attempt to keep up with inflation. So, how do we opt out of this matrix? You have to move from a consumer mindset to an owner mindset. If inflation is the taxation of currency, the only defense is owning scarce assets. The Cantillon effect rewards owners. When money is printed, asset prices rise. You must systematically convert your salary into things like low-cost index funds. When companies raise prices, their revenues go up, and by owning their stock, you capture that as profit. You also need to look at real estate, even just a starter home or a duplex, to lock in your housing costs. And for some, holding non-inflatable assets like gold or Bitcoin acts as a hedge against the debasement of the dollar itself. The goal is to get your money out of the fiat system and into hard assets as fast as possible. If you want to dive deeper into these specific strategies, I'd love for you to join the Optimizers. Just click the join button below. Our members get priority in the comments and special badges, and it's where I share more of the granular data I use for my own portfolio. Finally, you have to realize that a standard 3% raise is no longer enough. To outpace structural inflation, you need asymmetric income growth. This often means abandoning the myth of corporate loyalty. The largest salary jumps almost always come from strategic job hopping every 2 or 3 years. You also need to focus on skill stacking. Don't go back for an expensive master's degree that feeds the education bubble. Instead, stack high-value skills like AI prompting, data science, or digital marketing on top of your current expertise. Become irreplaceable. And always, always optimize your taxes. A dollar saved in taxes is worth more than a dollar earned. Use HSAs, Roth IRAs, and 401ks to shield your gains from the silent drain of bracket creep. The rules of the American economy have changed. The old path of saving your way to wealth in a bank account is dead. To thrive now, you have to be an investor, a strategist, and a ruthless auditor of your own life. The 18% raise was a distraction. The real game is what you do with what's left after the system takes its cut. The data doesn't lie. Americans are getting poorer with higher salaries because the unit of account, the dollar, is losing value faster than we can earn it. We're living in a world of manipulated metrics and structural hurdles. But understanding the game is the first step toward winning it. Financial literacy in the modern era is a defensive martial art. It's about seeing through the illusion and taking control of your personal economy. I want to hear from you in the comments. What has your personal inflation rate looked like over the last 3 years? Are you seeing your grocery bill or rent outpace your raises? Let's get some real-world data going in the discussion below. It helps everyone see the truth behind the headline numbers. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who's wondering why their big raise didn't change their life. I'm Tom, this is Tom Talks Money, and I'll see you in the next one.